Our SportsEdTV blog and Zoom meeting this time is with Elisabeth Oehler of Germany, a young coach who's having quite an impact on, I think, both the German scene and perhaps on CrossFit and probably those of us here in the States. So Elisabeth, welcome very much and happy to see you.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Great. I thought we'd just start with, let you run with I'm going to give very brief questions, I hope, and you give as long an answer as you wish, but tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into this position. It's very impressive that you're not only working with the Federation in Germany, but also it looks like you have a couple of your own little initiatives on the sideline.
That's true, yeah. Yeah, so my name is Elisabeth. I'm a bit older than I look, like I'm 28. Yeah, I work as a coach for the German Weightlifting Federation. At the moment, I'm responsible for the talent identification and the recruitment process for the federation. Before that, I was the Secretary General of the youth department, and I was mainly responsible for getting kids into weightlifting, and especially the more getting kids into doing weightlifting at schools and more that side. And now I'm more into the elite sport high performance part of the federation. I started weightlifting like 6 or 7 years ago through CrossFit. I think that's what many, especially female weightlifters, did. CrossFit first, and then they found out like that weightlifting is much better in CrossFit, especially for lighter girls. Sure. And then I switched to weightlifting. We have a pretty cool mixed gender competition league thing in Germany. It's called Bundesliga. So we have team competitions where females and males compete together in clubs against other clubs, and I was good enough to make it in one of the teams, and so that's how I got hooked up with weightlifting. But like I started very, very late, and I was always more into coaching, and especially into coaching kids and young athletes. And so I started coaching more and more, and then it turned out to become a job. Yeah. And I had the opportunity to work with the German Weightlifting Federation, and that's where I'm now for the last 2.5 years. Yeah,
that's great. And there's so many topics that you just brought up. I started to write them down. I said, no, I think I can remember them. I wanted to ask about the league situation because I know German weightlifting has always been based on league participation. And that's something that we don't necessarily have in this country. We have clubs, but we don't. The leagues are geographic determinants in Germany.
Yeah, so we have a first league that's like kind of the highest league we have. It's mixed of professional weightlifters who are in the national team and foreign weightlifters. So we have a lot of foreigners who lift in the league as well. And a huge part is also amateur weightlifters who just do it for fun, and they are basically competing for their clubs in a team of 6 athletes. And it's so the first Bundesliga, or the first league, it's all over the country. So we have a team from Berlin competing against a team from here, Heidelberg area. So I think the furthest they have to travel is around 700 and between 700 and 800 kilometers. And then we have a second league that's completely amateur, and they have like regions where they compete, and then kind of playoffs after the league where they compete against teams from the other part of Germany. So that's like the whole, how the league system works here. And it's kind of a good way to have everyone competing together and competing on a regular basis. So you can start competing in the leagues when you're 16 years old. And it goes up to, I think we even have competitors who are like over 40 who compete in the masters competition. So it's kind of a good thing to bring everyone together.
Oh, thank you very much for describing that so
Yeah.
completely. Again, I think in the United States, we have a very large country, and
Yeah.
sometimes travel and expense sometimes could be perhaps negated with the what we used to have a regional focus, which has been lost in the recent past. Nobody seems very concerned with it. So thank you. I'm sure some of our listeners will be saying, aha, we can create this here as well. Another question I wanted to ask is, did you come from a sports background yourself prior to CrossFit?
Not from an elite sports background. So I've always done a lot of sports, like all kind of different sports. I tried playing basketball, but I'm way short, so that never really worked out. I've tried playing handball, and I did athletics, and I was like a very multi-sport athlete when I was young, but nothing to like a elite level. And actually, what I experienced has a huge impact on how I coach now. I'm like very into multi sports for kids and youth athletes instead of specializing early.
Very good.
And so it worked for me, and I think it worked for a lot of other athletes as well. So yeah, but I've never been an elite weightlifter or an elite basketball player or whatever. So
You have
just enjoying sports.
good all-around background. And I think that's what we want before specialization.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Well,
like that's
go
what
ahead.
that's what we want, but like sometimes the system doesn't allow it. Unfortunately, like I would prefer having less youth high performance centers, or however you want to call it, and have like more working together with other sports and having a selection much later and not specializing that early. But it's kind of where the sports world goes at the moment. That's at least my feeling, like specializing as early as possible and have like a very early selection process. I know it's different in the US because of the high school and college system, or a bit different, but we don't have that here. So sometimes we have kids who are 8 or 9 years old coming to a weightlifting club and only want to do weightlifting. And like, it's not what I would support.
Well, I want to revisit that question and that concept a little later in the interview. I remember years ago, Frank Mentek came to the United States and gave a multi-day presentation. And one of the questions that came up was this: he's looking at adult performance at the Olympics, and then there's this other group that's looking for junior world championship results. And sometimes those don't connect as they perhaps should. So we'll get back to that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
What drew you to CrossFit, if I may ask?
Well, put me to CrossFit. I think I got involved in it in just a park. There were a few people working out, and then they said they are doing CrossFit. It was like back in the days where you didn't have really all these fancy great boxes, and and we just like worked out in a park in Berlin. And then it turned out they wanted to have like a CrossFit gym, and then they tried to build it. And I kind of got into it, and I liked the social aspects, and I especially liked the people. And for me, like the social aspect was the main reason to go into CrossFit. Not really, like I never really enjoyed these metcons and like these conditioning workouts and like being completely done after doing 45 minutes of exercise. I never really enjoyed it, but I enjoyed doing it with other people. So, and it was during my studies, and it was kind of very easy to get some exercise in. So that's why I joined CrossFit. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. And as we have presented our coaches education program, U.S. Weightlifting's coaching education program, in recent years, it seems like many of the participants have been from CrossFit. And I've asked many box owners they seem to reinforce the notion that their numbers may be 60% female, 40% male. And they all agree that the social aspect is one of the anchors that keeps the program going. So what you're
And it's
saying makes
also,
perfect sense.
yeah, I also think it's, at least for me, it has always been very nice to see that quite a huge variety of female bodies were represented in CrossFit, and like being muscular and being strong was like kind of cool and was nothing to hide.
Right.
And that's something where CrossFit actually did a lot for female athletes, or female strength athletes especially. I kind of felt I don't have to apologize for being maybe a bit bigger. Well, I'm not big, but being like a bit more muscular and a bit more stronger and to squat heavy, and like CrossFit accepts that. But like even in a commercial gym, if you are a woman and you're squatting heavy, everyone's like looking at you like you're some kind of a stranger or whatever. And the CrossFit doesn't do that. So I think for a lot of females, it's quite cool where CrossFit, how they see them as these strong personalities.
Yeah, it's been a great, I'll say, evolutionary process to watch it come along. 12 years ago, we had a Zoom with Mike Bergner, which you may have seen, and I'm sure you know the name, but Mike and I lifted against each other back in the dark ages. He first mentioned to me CrossFit around the year 2000, and I remember saying, what is it? But by 2008, I had seen the impact. And I was watching so many participants come to our programs. They wanted to learn to lift. I'm not sure they wanted to learn to be coaches, but they wanted to know more about snatch and clean and jerk. And so it's been an interesting process. I would say this, Elisabeth, CrossFit has had a huge impact on weightlifting in this country in terms of numbers. We now have thousands of athletes at national championships rather than a couple hundred.
Yeah.
And I don't know quite what the timetable was for CrossFit in Europe in particular, or in general, and in Germany in particular, but have you seen the same impact on the sport of weightlifting in Germany? Was there a lot of transition from CrossFit to weightlifting as a competitor?
Actually, yes. Like we have huge numbers now in German championships, and in all the regional competitions, and also in the league that we have. Like we even have teams that compete in the amateur league, like in the second one, who are just CrossFitters. They use our club system to get better at weightlifting for CrossFit. We actually like that we have like higher numbers and a lot more interest into weightlifting, especially our coaching courses that we offer. They are full of people who own CrossFit boxes, like especially CrossFit owners or CrossFit box owners, and people who want to get better at CrossFit. The only thing where we don't really see an benefit from is like the level they compete at. Like I always I work in recruiting and talent identification for German Weightlifting, and we always thought, oh, we're gonna look at CrossFit and find like great weightlifters through CrossFit, but especially for male weightlifters, that's not the case. We haven't found a single one who would like meet the standards that we have. And females, it's also it's different. Like there are a few that could have potential, but still the level is not that good, so that we could like recruit from CrossFit for weightlifting. Like maybe when we have like some CrossFit teens, but not the older ones. But I think that's also because the level in CrossFit in Germany is not as good as in the US, for example. Like the CrossFitters who are competitive here, don't really have the level like the elite CrossFitters have in the US.
I almost feel like you and I had dinner last night and we went over all these questions. You're anticipating where I want to go with much of this, which is great. I've observed, in fact, I've done some statistics, which I've only circulated to a few people, but comparing, let's say, a national championships in the 90s, in the early 2000s, and then current. And looking at the numbers, it appears that we have more weightlifters lifting less weight
Yes.
than we used to have.
Yes.
Which isn't helping at the elite level.
It's the same here, yes.
The difference, and I think there is a gender difference that I've seen, and the statistics that I've looked at bear this. Females have had an impact. And again, female weightlifting women's weightlifting would not have been that developed, let's say, in the 90s before it was in the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
Soon after the Olympic Games, it began to gather some momentum. But CrossFit has really brought to the sport women who are in much better physical condition prior to finding out about the snatch and the clean and jerk. And they go to the top much quicker. But as you said, we don't see this with the men. The men are focusing more on masters or CrossFit competitions by themselves.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're we're having the same experiences regardless of the distance between us. Good to know. How would you view the sport of weightlifting in Germany today? Germany certainly had a very rich history dating back to the earliest days. Had champions as recently as Steiner in 08. Where's German weightlifting today, if I may ask?
Yeah. So we have still athletes qualifying for the Olympic Games, but I think someone like Matthias Steiner is that's like a once in a century victory. I think it's not that something like that is like repeatable with a system, especially if you know the whole story behind it and what drove him or what made him win the Olympics in 2008. And also like the generation that we are dealing with now is a bit different. We don't really have many athletes in the higher weight classes anymore. We are more active in the lower weight classes. Like we have a guy qualifying for the Olympics next year in the 61 kilogram class, and the 73 and the 81, but we don't really have the heavier guys anymore. And also, if I look into our youth national teams, we don't really have the super heavyweights that we were actually like famous for. We always had good super heavyweights in Germany, like also before Steiner, it was Ronny Vella and many others. At the moment it's difficult. We are still on a good way to qualify athletes for the Olympics. But I don't know if it's maybe the generation that we are dealing with now, but like having a career in an Olympic sport is not what they really want anymore. I see that with a lot of youth athletes, they have so many options to do now, and like choosing weightlifting or choosing an Olympic sport where you have to train so hard and where you have to sacrifice so much to make it to the top is not really something they choose anymore. It's like very rare that we find young athletes who are willing to go that way with us. It's kind of we fight for every athlete for every athlete to make it to go that path as us. Yeah.
Good. No, that's a great explanation. No, Germany's been on top in the past. The U.S. has been on top in the past. Neither of us are there today. So it's interesting to compare notes with a good neighbor. Thank you. I want to switch a little bit to coaching because that's you obviously enjoy coaching,
Yeah.
and you've been tasked with specifically coaching youth, and as you said, talent identification. Um, so I'd like for you to discuss maybe what the coaching scheme is in Germany.
Mm.
One, and when I was with U.S. Weightlifting, we used something that had come from your group as a talent ID, which involved a long jump and a two-hand shot put, throw over the head,
Yeah.
and general fitness. We wanted to find explosive athletes.
Yeah.
I've had other well-known parties in U.S. weightlifting in recent years say, yes, talent identification is important, but our problem has been we found lots of very good talent, but we can't get them to be weightlifters. And I don't know whether you have the same frustration or not, but it's sometimes a shame. You see someone, you know they could be a very good weightlifter, but see you later, I'm going to go get a job or some other sport.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we have the same problem. Like what I stopped like in the beginning when I started doing this job for German weightlifting, I was all about like having great tests to identify talents for weightlifting, but like I found out very quickly that I can't really or that we can't really see talent and like before they are at least like 18, 19, 20 years old. Like everything we do in the younger age groups, it's basically finding out if they have like athletic talent. Do you have talent for sports in general? Do they know how to move? Do they have like mobility? Do they have are they explosive? That's what we can find out. But if someone is going to be a weightlifter, we can't really say that before they haven't trained for a while and they really have understood what it means to train weightlifting. Because you have the snatch and you have the clean and jerk, and you need to have a lot of willpower, and you need to be like very dedicated to your training, and for me that's also part of being a talent. Like it's not just the physical part, but it's the mental part as well. Are they willing to sacrifice a lot to make it to the top or not? That's for me that's like kind of like a mental talent they need to have for weightlifting. But like yeah, we made the same experiences. I found I always find a lot of kids where would say, oh, you could try weightlifting and you have like you are explosive and you even already have like good strength and good leg strength, for example. And then they always saying like, yeah, but I'm already doing another sport. Like I'm already in athletics, or I'm already doing powerlifting or whatever. And then especially for me, it's very frustrating with powerlifters because especially women who have the strength already, and then they're saying, yeah, but it's much easier for me to be successful in powerlifting than in weightlifting. And yeah, it's kind of frustrating for me to see talented athletes that go to different sports, or that go to school or to university and stop training completely. Like I think you can study and train at the same time and be successful if you manage it well and you have a coach who supports you, all of that. But like yeah, it's I think we are having the same experiences.
Are the athletes at some point incentivized in terms of national team? Perhaps do they receive a stipend or financial support, or are they having to work a regular job during the day?
So all of the athletes that are in the national, or most of the athletes that are in the national team, they have a support. I think at the moment we only have just a handful that work in regular job. The rest is either supported by the military, the police, where they are supported by university and having like we get funding from the German Olympic Sports Confederation
Uh-huh.
for these kind of athletes. So they get a lot of support. The decision between doing or weightlifting and studying, or weightlifting and a job, they don't really, that's really just for those who don't really have the potential. Everyone who has potential here in Germany gets the funding and the support they need. Yeah, that's the case. So that's not really a problem we have. Like, we have enough. I think there haven't been enough, or there haven't been that much money in weightlifting for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, we get really a lot support, especially from the German Olympic Sports Confederation.
The I guess I'd ask, as you mentioned earlier, in the U.S., certainly many Olympic sports come from college and university programs. Our weightlifting university program is rather small. It's mostly considered clubs rather than teams. It's not recognized by the governing bodies, etc. I'm going to guess that there are no weightlifting scholarships in Germany for promising athletes.
We don't we don't have the normal college or the college sports system that you have in the US. So it's not it's like you get support, financial support, and also support from the Olympic training centers when you're a student at a university.
Right.
We have we have people working at the Olympic training centers. They are kind of career advisors, or that's what I would translate it. So they help students to manage studying and training at the same time. But it's not what the universities do. Like, basically, we are working the weightlifting schedule or the sports schedule around the university, and not the other way around. So that's how it works here. And they are allowed to take a bit longer to study. And there's one big thing that we have in Germany, like, we don't pay study fees. Like, no one pays study fees, so that's not an issue here. Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, how about the development of coaches? I guess the general topic of coaches education. How is that handled in Germany?
I think most, especially younger coaches, they have like the same story as I have. Like, they just do something in a club. Like, I actually started coaching kids, and started introducing like weightlifting in schools and stuff, and I did that all on a volunteer basis for, I think, almost 2 years. And yeah, someone like especially the federation liked what I was doing. And then they were very supportive with coaching education, or what was coaching education. So Frank Mantek, he's my boss. He came and said, yeah, we help you to grow and develop as a coach. We like what you're doing, and so we're going to support you in whatever you need to grow as a coach. So that was very helpful, and I'm trying to do that with other coaches as well, or with younger coaches now. Well, I'm still very young, but like and try to be more on like a mentoring, do it like grow coaches or develop coaches on a mentoring basis. I think that's a bit better than having a lot of formal education. Just talking to them, like reflecting on their work and helping when they have a problem with an athlete, or that's like how we try to support especially younger coaches.
Does the German sports system, all sports, I guess, have a what I would call almost a coach's education major in schools? I mean, can one choose, say, I want to be a coach and receive proper education? The reason I asked, Elisabeth, in this country, many of our weightlifting coaches do not have degrees in sports science, let's say, if they've been to college.
Yeah.
And I don't. I mean, my degree was in psychology and sociology, which had an emphasis on coach's education. I was very lucky to go to a school that had that opportunity. But for someone who has a fine arts degree, if they want to be a weightlifting coach in this country, they can do so. So we don't really have a pathway of educating coaches, and it becomes almost more of a self-education.
Yeah.
And I wonder, one, whether or not Germany has that, and then also when you mentioned that you started off by volunteering to coach, had you been through any sort of certification program at that point to show that, yes, I know what I'm talking about, or did you just have a very good marketing skill?
No, like, I started, we have 3 different kind of licenses we do with German weightlifting. It's like a C, a B, and an A license.
Yeah.
C is for coaching youth athletes and kids. B is then like a bit more into elite sports, and then like an A license is basically just for those who work with elite athletes.
Right.
I've done the C license first before I started coaching. I always felt I always was one of those young coaches. I don't want to like coach without having like the proper education. So I did the C license. That it took me, I think, a few months to do it. You have a huge part, a sport specific part at the German Weightlifting Federation, and then you have like a lot of other topics that you have to cover, like also like coaching science stuff and nutrition and basic sports science stuff that you have to do with other coaches from other sports. So I've done this course first. And then when I got the job at the German Weightlifting Federation, I thought it's time for me to maybe study sports science again, because it's my obligation also towards my athletes, like to have the best knowledge and like always to grow and develop. So I started 2.5 years ago. I started studying sports science next to my full-time job. That's been quite a hustle. It's a lot of work doing that besides a full-time job. But I did it through a program from the German Olympic Sports Confederation. So they have a cooperation with a university for coaches who already work in sports but haven't studied sports science. So it's a special program. So for example, in my course now, or in I study together with football coach, like soccer coaches and basketball coaches, swimming coaches, whatever. And they already work in like for a federation or for a club or whatever, but I haven't studied sports science. So we have that option to study as a coach. And while working as a coach, and they try to combine a lot with what you're actually doing in your job. So I was able to do a lot of projects for university in cooperation with German weightlifting, what was really, really great. So it got me the opportunity to study and work full-time at the same time, basically.
Now, you've mentioned a couple times full-time work. Is that considered with weightlifting, or do you have a job we don't know about? Okay.
No, that's weird. No, I work full time for doing weightlifting, like 40 hours a week.
Okay.
Sometimes more.
I was afraid you were in a dress shop or something, and you had to squeeze all this in when you could. Good. I'm glad to hear that. We'll move on to something we talked about earlier. I guess just an overview, which you probably have already given, but we've gone from Olympic Games and World Championships to having a Junior World Championships. That was started in 1875. Then we've gone, because of, I think, the inclusion of the Youth Olympics, we've gone to having a Youth World Championships and a Youth Continental Championships. And it just seems like, as you said, we're in many cases, we're asking more of younger athletes. And if we know in weightlifting, generally speaking, I think the old data used to indicate it takes about 10 years to mature into a solid weightlifter who can compete at the elite level, at the Olympic Games. Well, if you start at 8, you're finished at 18. And we've seen that in many sports in this country. We have Little League, we have Pop Warner football, we have the teams. I think team sports are different than individual sports in terms of what you can expect. A lot of team sports are fun, and you go out and have fun, and later on you decide, well, I like this sport. I'm going to go ahead and specialize in. Well, weightlifting, when you're required to go out on the platform all by yourself, and you've got a barbell in front of you, and you're basically good or bad lift, and many of us fail as we lift. I'm not sure that the young mind is totally prepared to deal with that. And then coaches and parents seem to have great expectations of what some youngster can do versus looking long range at what can happen in the future. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so I see the problem, especially having like youth European or world championships, is that it's supporting early specialization, and it's supporting having like young athletes just lifting and not doing anything else, and it's supporting maybe also training or overtraining youth athletes. And we have made a decision 2 years ago that we are not sending any one of our athletes to the under 15 European or World Championships, and we also don't send anyone to the Youth World Championships in general. The first time they can go to an international competition is in the under 17s. And we try to also have quite high standards for that, and we try to monitor those youth athletes that can go to the European Youth Championships quite a lot. Personally, I would be fine if we don't even send anyone to the Youth European or World Championships at all. It's fine if they started at junior level. And I also I understand why a lot of weightlifting clubs, especially in Germany, are looking for very, very young kids, sometimes 8, 9, 10 years old, to start weightlifting. But it's a very long way. And when you consider the peak age in weightlifting, what at the moment is between 25 and 28, when they come with 8 years old, they have 20 years to stay in the sport, and to stay in a sport that has actually just the snatch and the clean and jerk. And like how are you getting them, or how you motivate them over such a long period of time to just do this, and also from a training or a sports science method, like after 10 years, where's like the improvement? Like if they have already done weightlifting for the last 10 years, like how do you get the body to adapt further and to maybe get that little last inch that you need to make it to the top? So I would prefer having kids not competing in weightlifting until they are 18, and letting them do like multiple sports, and then but do strength training on the side, like that's fine. If they especially squat a lot, that doesn't really harm them, and learn the techniques. It's basically leg, or what I always say, it's like lower body strength and technique, what they need. The rest we can kind of develop later. And yeah, so I'm not very supportive of all these youth competitions that are just focusing on a total.
Those are two beautiful answers that I, again, had set to discuss. So briefly, it appears to me, at least from my days with weightlifting, it seems like the Germans experimented with the technique competition with younger lifters. We've had great debates in this country. Nobody seems to have been able to come up with, first off, we don't have coaches agree on what is good technique. So it's hard to have a technique competition if the judges don't agree.
Yeah.
I keep saying we're not figure skating, we're not diving, we're not gymnastics. Our judges have not been trained for that. Do you have an attempt at technique competitions in Germany?
Yeah, we still have. Yeah, we still have. So the first time youth athletes can compete on national level is when they are 13, and when they're 13, 14, 15, they only have like they only have competitions where they do a total. They get technique points from the
Right.
judges, and they have to do some like basic athletic
Some
exercises,
fitness measurement, yeah.
long jump and or a med ball throw or pull-ups or something like that. So it's kind of a combination of those three. But the problem with like these technique competitions is you need to have first of all, you need to have the acceptance of the coaches, and the judges need to have like certain standards. um, and it's a lot of educating the judges. It's a lot of educating the coaches as well, because I've seen it quite a few times where kids went off the competition stage, and what they got bad technique points, like only 3 from 10 or whatever. And the coach just told them like, oh, it doesn't matter, like next year you're 16 and then technique doesn't matter anymore. And then you're like standing there, oh my heart, that's like so wrong. Like also from a coaching point of view, to tell your 15-year-old athletes like technique doesn't matter when you're 16 anymore, you don't get technique points. So that's like not getting the whole thing. So to have technique competitions, like coaches need to support this. It's like the most important thing. If coaches don't support it, it doesn't work. You can give them technique or bad technique points, and the coach just tells them, no, you're doing good, like just wait until you're 16, 17, and we don't have technique competitions anymore. It's like it's a kind of a good, like the intention of technique competition is very good, but it's a lot of effort for the federation to have the judges and everyone else involved in this whole process.
Yeah. No, a very good answer. Thank you. I think we're on the same page. Are you seeing during the current times during this pandemic that you're having to change any of the training or competition expectations? I know we still are not certain whether competitions will exist this year. Right? To a certain extent, it'll change by state, perhaps. Some of the gyms are open, some of the gyms are not open. What are you experiencing?
So we are on all national teams, also the youth national teams and the Olympic training centers. They are already training since mid of May. So that's quite a long time. They already been training for almost a cycle now. We have a lot of training groups that have done like small competitions in their training centers or in their gyms, just to get a competition in. It's more like a training competition. We are not fully back to having normal competitions how we used to. We have the German youth and German junior championships end of the year. We are not sure if they're gonna take place. But I like, from my point of view, like the break from especially mid of March till mid of May was actually very, very good for a few youth athletes. So we had a lot of youth athletes coming back from just doing home workouts and doing other stuff and like focusing on school, and a lot of them have tried do sprint work outside or doing like a circuit at home or stuff like that. And especially the younger ones, like 14 or like 13, 14, 15-year-olds, they came back, and we're back to training or back at the barbell, and they made a few weeks later they already made, or they made PR, like personal bests. And I think the break and doing something else and maybe getting their head off a bit of the sport was actually quite good for a lot of athletes
Good
from that
points.
have.
Very good
Yeah.
points. I did. You mentioned recently leg strength, and I certainly agree with you. Prior to when we first set up this appointment, I Googled German weightlifting program. I wanted to see what the latest was. And the whole first page is dealing with bodybuilding sites talking about 10 sets of 10. Now, I remember the introduction of 10 sets of 10 in the early 1980s, which I received from the then West Germans. And I said, this is a very interesting theory. It certainly would promote a lot of hypertrophy of muscles, I think. But I never could find out that certainly we're not going to do 10 sets of 10 in snatch or in clean and jerk, in squatting or pulling perhaps. Is this thinking still available today in Germany, or have these sites?
And I think a lot of people took it out of context.
Yes, exactly.
Like most people took it out of context. The funny thing is the guy who introduced it, he used to be my coach. So that's quite funny. And he always said he only did 10 sets, 10 reps for the younger boys who had to, or the younger guys. Back in the days, there were no women weightlifting.
Right.
So he did it for those in the off season who had to gain weight and who had to move up weight class to compete. And that's the only way why he did it. And everyone took it completely out of context. Like, I don't think anyone here does even more than, or does 10 reps, or not even 5 sets, 10 reps. Most are, I think that's very outdated, and a lot of people took it out of context.
Thank you. Yeah. It's part of the problems with the internet today. I appreciate your confirmation of that. Also, while looking around, I went to the German Federation site just to see what was going on. I noticed in your store, years ago, 15 years ago, I bought the posters that were available with Russo and Hessler, I think.
Yeah, it was Huster and Caruso.
Huster, yeah. And I have those up in my training room now. But in those days, and I know things have changed, but I always saw the German team very representative of Adidas. And I noticed in the store that everything seemed to be very heavy on the Nike side of things. And of course, we've had the same situation here. But I wondered, are you in a position to say, is the Federation, would a national team athlete, and I only ask this because you've seen probably on our website, the discussion of shoes. And I think Nike and Adidas make very good shoes, and no doubt some other companies do as well. Yeah. But has there been a change in the thinking at the federation level?
Yeah, it's like Nike is the sponsor of the German Weightlifting Federation, so yeah, that's why we have why they're all wearing Nike.
Yeah.
And I think most athletes prefer the new or the Romaleo 2 shoe. I know a few of the older athletes, they still have, the old Adidas with the wooden heel. You remember those? I think that was the 2008 one.
As do I.
Yeah, it was the 2008 one. A lot of people say this one was the best. But yeah, like, I think we leave shoes mainly to what the athletes prefer.
Sure.
And what we also do is, like, most of or all of them wear the Romaleo 2, but they have like special insoles, and their shoes are prepared for them. So yeah, that.
Good. Well, I mean, do you find that we saw a great amount of growth in the U.S. market for barbells and for racks and certainly for shoes and uniforms as people came to the sport. Do the young lifters start off with lifting shoes, or do they tend to use more general footwear?
Yeah, they no, they. I think all of them wear lifting shoes, but yeah, I think it's very dependent on what they
Okay.
prefer. But I'm not really. I think they, especially the youth athletes, don't really need lifters or lifting shoes. Um, and especially not like the kids. We even I think we have
They tend to
kids.
be they're
They
rather
can,
expensive.
yeah, that's like not worth it in my opinion. And they have the ankle mobility and all of that, so it's actually they should just find a stable shoe and that's it. Yeah, but
That's a
I think people make a lot of fuss about like equipment and having like the perfect shoes and having knee sleeves and wrist wraps and I don't know. I think now you're even able to now you're even some of them even tape like the whole fingers and I think there is a lot of fuss about all of that and I don't really get it.
well, Elisabeth, you've given us a very fresh perspective on things, especially as it relates to the things in Germany. We're going to have, I know, you've seen enough on SportsEdTV. We're having a very big impact around the world, huge numbers. We're trying to. We have a whole new library of weightlifting exercises that will
Yeah.
probably be up within about a month. How can someone get a hold of you? How can we help promote what you're doing?
How you can help me out or
How can we help promote you if we have viewers who would like to know more about what you're doing or they'd
mm,
like to get some ideas on youth training, things like that. How you've got a website?
yeah.
Would you
So
like to tell us?
yeah, the rest is like I have a website. It's EO, also ENO minus performance.com. Or just send me an email. I'm very interested in discussing strength training for youth athletes, also from different kind of sports. I think it's a great way to introduce barbells into soccer or rugby or swimming or any other sport and have like a good physical preparation program for youth athletes. So if you're interested in that, then just contact me and yeah, I'm always very happy to help with strength programs for kids.
Great.
Um,
Well,
yeah.
we will certainly include links within the blog when this is written out, and I hope you get lots of traffic coming your way. Uh,
That would be great.
it's been a real pleasure. I hope we get a chance to meet sometime on the platform or near the platform. But in the meantime, if we can be of any assistance, I know you're also going to be contributing to SportsEdTV
Yeah.
as a writer every once in a while. So please also look at the concept of, as you just mentioned, strength and conditioning for other sports. We'd love to know what your thoughts are on and we're asking for many different opinions. There's not only one right way or one wrong way to do things. We'd love to hear from you on that and certainly
Mhm.
thank you. Wish you the best in your career.
Thank you.